letter sige hunyo gi June pago las 9:30. Gimapos na si Mona continua inekungog ni tarea ni komiteya ni para uekungog ginagawa i gobernamento zani ayan siya ni gobernamento siya ni para i cover necesidad niya para estimam may lagi 2015 na sakan pagunaugan nagagit ko ni sa tarakta pagunaugan para tayo kungog i Universidad Guam. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We're back from our recess of last week. The Committee on Appropriation continues the budget hearings for the upcoming 2015 fiscal year. The departments and agencies have submitted their budget requests through the executive branch, and the autonomous and semi-autonomous agencies of the government of Guam have submitted their budget requests directly to the legislature and the committee. This morning, we are pleased and honored to have officials from the University of Guam to make the presentation of their case for what their needs are for the upcoming 2015 fiscal year budget. I want to say that I make my voice this way just in honor of Chris Felix being here. I want to thank everyone who's here this morning. To my immediate right is the Vice Speaker of the Guam Legislature and retired Chief Justice, DJ Cruz. And to my extreme left is Senator Aileen Yamashita, an ever-present participating member of this committee. Thank you very much, and Sister Swasi. I would like to then go ahead and recognize the President. Is it the 10th President?
10th.
10th. Yeah. The 10th President of
I
the
think one
University.
was counted twice.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe
Dr. Robert Anuit. Sister Swasi, Senor.
Okay. Buen provecho. Sister Swasi para Haugon, Senor Pangilinan, Senador Pangilinan, por esta oportunidad para ben presente y ginagaw mami. Sinyata alulaja esti morna no mas maulik para hita todo. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you this morning the university's budget proposal. With me is, to my right, is Regent Chris Felix. On the other side of Regent Chris Felix is Interim Senior Vice President Dr. Anita Enriquez and the Vice President for Admin and Finance. On my left is Mr. David O'Brien. So what we'd like to do is go through these slides very quickly. We have the slides?
No.
We don't have slides. Oh, they have copies. We'll skip the slides.
I'm feeling better already.
Wow, we get points taken off for that. Okay. And of course, I have a lot of people here from the university. It's amazing. They all showed up voluntarily, you know. Isn't that right? and I also want to recognize our student regent Orsini is with us this morning as well. Okay, well, the key points for us here in our budget request is for fiscal year 15 is that this will enable the university to continue to provide accessible and affordable education for as many people on the island, to develop our social and economic capacity in our community, and create change and growth through research and innovation. It will facilitate the implementation of the Great UOG, which is a process we've been through for the past couple of years. And our request is actually aligned pretty much with prior years. And we want to build on the support that has been provided by this body over the past few years. The Board of Regents has gone through the process. The budget that we're presenting today, Regents have participated in the planning process and of course in the outlining of strategic initiatives, and they're constantly involved in long-term financial planning and budget assumptions. Board reviews and oversees all university budgets and adopts the university budget by resolution. And I believe, well, I know the board passed, of course they Basically, our request on slide number 4 is $30.3 million for general operations, $3.6 million for the Student Financial Aid Program, $500,000 for appropriations for Weary and Hatchery. We need an additional $1.2 million for the annualized pay plan adjustments, which we've added because the plan that was outlined by the governor does not include the faculty and administrators at the university and non-classified staff. So that's included here, and it's approximately a 2% pay adjustment for them, and for the administrators and the faculty account for about 1/3 of this 1.2 million. The basic point I want to make is actually easiest to understand on slide number 6. Last year we had a $26.6 million appropriation, and then we got a $1.5 million to defray tuition increase and $2 million from the debt service exemption. So what we've done is we've combined that all to basically be consistent with our fiscal year request for 2015, in the hopes that we're assuming that this basically becomes our base budget moving forward. And the basic logic behind this is that the maintenance of effort for the university is about 5% for the total GovGuam revenues. It historically has been around 5%. That's what accreditors look at, and so this represents about 4.78%, something like that, and of the anticipated revenues. And as long as we're in the ballpark, it doesn't look like the local government, the state government, for accreditation purposes, is weakening in their support. It appears to be stable, and what we want to provide for your consideration is the understanding that this will provide for us the basis for the foreseeable future. If we accept this amount, and basically, other than maybe adjustments for inflation, we're basically assuming that this would be or an enormous increase in GovGuam revenues. We're basically assuming that this would be the budget life of the University of Guam. That's part of the good to great process that we've been through. One of the most difficult lessons that we've tried to teach ourselves is that the financial realities are what they are. We're not pretending them to be something else, and we have to live within our means, and I think the university does so. Next slide, on page 7. This slide, I think, is the most the slide that almost everyone, particularly policymakers like yourselves, can really take pride in. The University of Guam is the only public institution that I know of that has kept tuition flat for the past 5 years. So this is a national record of success. If you look at this slide here, you can see that almost every state, these are like Hawaii has gone up over 70% in the past 5 years. California, actually, the California and the Idaho slide here, the figures are reversed. But almost everybody has gone up 30, 40, 50% in their tuition. Every state has increased their tuition because of the declining support of the state. And what we've done in collaboration with yourselves, the legislature, and the support of the legislature and the governor, is that we've been able to maneuver it so that tuition's flat. I think this is probably one of the great success stories of the university these past 5 years. And if we get this budget request, we can keep it flat for another year, and then we already have in plan a moderate increase of 5% in the succeeding year. Just so I think a lot of people, are kind of maybe don't fully comprehend what the tuition is, because they think of their own personal experience when they were going to school maybe in the 80s or basically tuition has ballooned, in particularly in public institutions, because the state support for the institutions has declined so dramatically, as it has for the University of Guam. So now the University of Guam is getting roughly between 30 and 33% of the money it spends comes from government of Guam appropriation. In many states, it's down around 20%, 25%. And so in order to kind of deal with that, tuition has gone up. We've tried to offer the notion that this is kind of a social compact between the student and the society that supports them, and trying to keep about a 50-50 ratio between what it actually costs for you and the tuition that you're being charged. And so, and we're roughly at that point right now. We're about 50-50. If we start to go up, the tuition starts to go up, I think it breaks faith with the student. And that always, I try to impress upon the students that combination of whether a degree is a personal good or a public good. And so that's it's personal good, and it's a public good. And if they see it only as a personal good, then they ought to pick up more of the cost. But if they also see it as a public, the public should pick up the cost, and they ought to see it as a public good, so that there's a reciprocal relationship there. And that's generally the thinking. On the next slide, you'll see that we've had a steady increase in enrollment. And the base semester we always use is the fall semester of each academic year. So, coming out of the questions over accreditation in the early part of this century, we've seen the increase in enrollment continue. I want to point out that, again, this is in a slightly opposite direction than most of the 50 states. Most of the 50 states, enrollment in public universities has gone flat or has declined. So university remains a good bargain. Our good to great statement on slides 9 and 10, basically we tried to, based on public law, identify what is the statement of greatness for the university. What is it that the university can be great at that no other university can be great at? Where is its passion? And how does that connect to resources? That was generally the thinking behind the good to great process. It took about 2 years to work out. We used all the language that's in this statement is directly from the public laws that enabled, that created the charter of the University of Guam. Greatness consists of leadership in learning, teaching, discovery, and service that preserve the essential strengths of the region's cultures and natural resources, and applying those strengths to new challenges in flexible, multiple ways that transform the students of the university's partner, and the university itself. We thought this was a very important thing to do at the university at this point, because when people work at a university or people talk about the university, they rarely talk about the actual mission of the university. They imagine the university is supposed to fulfill some role that they have in their own mind, as opposed to the actual charter of the university, the actual purpose, the actual history. So by bringing this to light, we think that we wanted to highlight this, and then we went through the process of asking two very independent committees. One looked at administrative and support services, one looked at academic programs, and we asked them to put all these activities into quintiles. We didn't ask them to grade them A, B, C. We were afraid of grade inflation. So instead we said, no, you have to put them in categories 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we'll see where they rank, and then we'll adapt, transform, and remove as necessary. Out of this process, which has now been passed by the Board of Regents, we've basically taken 11 programs and have either combined them or transformed them and eliminated some. And so now we're leaner. We have benchmarks. We know what now we know what is a BA degree. Uh, in the past, different programs were allowed to decide for themselves. So you had degree requirements, credit hour requirements that went all the way from 119 to 145. So now we're moving towards 124. You have a program, you have to graduate 5 people a year, otherwise you don't have a program. Maybe nice to have a program, maybe good to have graduating 5 people a year. The university shouldn't be, because it's putting something else out of focus. So it shares the burden of that, and I think, it's a pretty tough thing for a lot of, particularly people in academic settings, because in academic settings, most of the time, the discussion about programs is not based upon finances or a mission statement, but basically conversation on, intellectual trends and what we think we need. So the implementation plan that we're focusing on is there, the student experience and student success. This is something that, from developmental math and English, looking at developmental math and English, looking at how students are inducted into the University of Guam. In other words, what are their initial experiences? Getting the whole university community to see students as clients and as customers, and not just people in a kind of an academic boot camp, but understanding. It's a tough lesson to learn when we tell people we get 100 new students. That means $570,000 in revenue. You get 200 students, that's over $1 million in revenue. So understanding that and making sure that people connect that to resources, I think this is very important to us. Strongly sustainable and adequately resourced programs. We forced different programs to start looking at the costs that are involved. Hadn't been done before, so people are looking at that. Now making demands and making analysis on the basis of that. Some were very surprised that they cost so much. Some were very surprised that they were generating so much revenue. So all of these issues are coming to the surface. RCUOG, enhancing our research capacity. Again, a bill passed by the legislature. Connectivity to the outside world. And I stress this is a policy item that the legislature may address over time, but it certainly is something that we've really been alerted to by the new president of University of Hawaii, David Lassner. He just became president a couple of weeks ago. David Lassner came out here a couple of years ago and told us that Guam is more connected to the rest of the world than Hawaii is in terms of its IT infrastructure. And the reason why we're not taking advantage of it is a number of factors, but he was articulating the case that it's the university should take the lead because it does so much research. It should get time on the fiber optic cables, run their own internet through the fiber optic cables, relay information through the fiber optic cables to other universities, move data quickly, do telecom, do everything through that. And that there's enough room on all these fiber optic cables to do that. But so that's a kind of groundbreaking thing that we hadn't thought about. Automated, streamlined processes, relying everything using big data, and trying to eliminate paperwork, and of course financial sustainability. Next slide. I just want to thank the legislature for allowing us the flexibility with student financial aid. Public Law 31237 allows for greater flexibility, so now we have new innovative programs to address student success, retention, and completion. One such program going into effect this semester in the fall is that a student who moves from freshman to sophomore in 3 semesters, which people say, well, gosh, 3 semesters, you should be moving from freshman to sophomore. But believe it or not, here's the reality. The reality is we have like almost a 40% dropout between freshmen and sophomores, largely because of the developmental math and English needs. We need to pay more attention to that. But if someone moves in 3 semesters without, which is defined without not including developmental credits, then we'll give them $1,000 in tuition credit. So now they have an incentive. If someone actually finishes in 4 years, we'll give them $1,000 in addition to a diploma. So now we're giving them a financial incentive. Now the average in the country for a universities is 40% graduate after 6 years. So that means there's a 60% dropout rate across the country. For us, our average is 28, 29%. So we're a little bit behind the national average, but we need to boost that. And so this allows us to do this. Also, for the first time, we're going to have this year a unified award letter in advance of enrollment at the university, which is more or less common in other places, but sort of unprecedented here, which is when a student gets a letter of admission to the university, they're told right there in the letter how much financial federal aid they get and how much GovGuam financial aid they're eligible for. So this is, again, I want to thank the legislature for that. Are enhancing our research capacity. Our grants and contracts, all federal aid, $39 million, up 85% since 2003. In order to continue this growth into other areas, growth into possible private-public partnerships, and to have scalable infrastructure required to manage these grants, we're creating the RCUOG, which provides an opportunity to move quickly on grants and contracts and not be hampered by existing processes, and hopefully enhance it so that we don't have to just rely on our existing infrastructure, administrative financial infrastructure. So to recap, legislative support for the university's future has been the Student Financial Assistance for Higher Ed, tuition support, UOG Research Corporation, the Student Services Center and Engineering Annex. I think we've amended this bill like 4 or 5 times due to circumstances beyond our control. Either it's USDA or it's the borrowing patterns of the government of Guam or whatever the situation is. But we're very close now, and so we appreciate that. We still have left the possibility of the Lot 5397, which surrounds the university, and the approval of the fiscal year 15 budget request. And that concludes my prepared remarks, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Underwood. Is there anybody else from the panel that wish to make a statement before we ask members of the body if they were willing to ask questions? No? Okay. I'm going to defer then to the chairman of the Committee on Education, Speaker Judy Wampa. I want to thank her for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Underwood, on page 11, you indicated, of course, these new programs. When is that going to be implemented? The retention and on-time completion grant award?
Oh, that's going to be implemented this year, the upcoming year.
And the one right after it, where you said UOG will provide all students, are these all the high school students, seniors?
No, these are students
Just
that are
those that-
admitted to the university. So they would, so in order to get them, we have to get them to fill out the FAFSA while they're still in high school, and that's another issue. What we're hoping to do, and maybe the legislature would like to be involved in this, is we're trying to figure out a way to get tax preparers to help people fill out the FAFSA when they're submitting their tax return, because it only adds another 5 minutes to the process, and then it would facilitate everybody then filling out the FAFSA form, and it would alert the families to the possibility. They've tried this in a pilot form in the Boston area with HR Block, and we thought about it this past year, and we tried to write to tax preparers to do it, but there's like legal issues, like why are you selecting some tax preparers figure out a process whereby we can, outside of we normally do it through the schools. You can do it through the high schools. You can do it through the counselors. But the data that they need in there is the tax return. So it may be possible to try to figure out a process whereby we're getting the tax preparers to help families fill out the FAFSA right then when they're preparing the tax return. Or get Rev and Tax to help us do that. And then that way they would get their FAFSA, and then we would know their eligibility for FAFSA. All they have to do is write UOG on the FAFSA form. I think they can write up to how many schools on that? Huh? They can write up to 10 schools, but want to make sure UOG is one of them. And then we'll get the information. Then it's kind of also recruitment, but it's also it helps get people to understand what the available resources are.
Majority of our students are in our public schools are under the free and reduced program, so they would then be eligible. And I'm wondering whether just the seniors in the high schools would be like to either give them the applications to have their parents fill out and mail it in, and at the same time it would encourage them, or rather make them even think that there's a possibility that they could go to the university. It's just, it's something maybe to consider, either if it's not the original FAFSA's form, but maybe something similar to it because of the verification of some confidential information, that at least it would be a start to one. It's an awareness, of course, to the students, graduating students, to consider the possibility of going to the university. The second, of course, is that you'll be able to get more students and to participate, fill out the form. It would help you. The data would definitely help you to reach out to our local students. And I'd like to congratulate the university, of course, because we've been going to all the graduations, and many of the students have indicated, usually like half of them, that they'll be taking advantage of the merit scholarship and attending the university. So,
Well, thanks to you.
yeah, so
They don't have any other option.
that's true.
Or maybe-
Yeah, but that's good, because I want them to go to the university. I have a few more questions I'd like to ask, and I know you expressed that funding in this budget would help to implement the Good to Great program. So can you share with us that when you're looking at the departments and the different programs at the university to determine how you're going to go from good to great? So some of the questions I have is that what are the areas that you feel were strong, and what are the areas that are weak, and how did those programs then influence your budgeting for the next fiscal year?
Well, I think the programs that were rated poorly were, in quintiles 4 and 5. A large number of them were because they didn't have enough students in them, so they weren't sustainable programs. There's also some questions about the demand relationships. In other words, what happens to student graduates after they graduate from this program, and the quality of the program. So some of the concerns there were some school of ed programs, criminal justice. So those were the programs that were rated as weak. So what Good to Great does is it establishes a process whereby those programs can become stronger. Not necessarily investing in them, but establishing the benchmarks. So what we hope to do is every year we'll have money set aside that we can invest in these programs. So the initial ones that were rated strongly, that were rated, very highly, like biology, which is robust, a lot of majors, high quality, and financially relatively solvent. Well, they're going to get they'll get a little bit of money, incentive money, to do more. But the process of Good to Great was not so much a process of identifying where the money is going to go as what the general academic direction of the university, and establishing those benchmarks for programs. So now, based on this budget. Once we get this budget through, one of the things that we hope to get off the cycle of doing at the university, which we've done for years, is that once we know how much money we have, then we're going to establish that these are the positions that we have. And now, once we have these faculty positions, then we're going to hire them, and the faculty positions are going to be assigned to programs that actually exist at certain levels. So you can't have a program major that doesn't have at least 1.0 FTE devoted to it. You can't continue to survive that way. You can't have a program minor which doesn't have at least a half FTE assigned to it. So that the scale of the programs maintain their quality for accreditation purposes, and so that the students are well served, because the students are then able to get their classes. So it's a kind of a moving target, but in terms of the quality of the programs, I think most of the programs will do well, because for the first time now we have benchmarks and we have a plan of action. So for the School of Ed programs, given 3 years to go from primarily an undergraduate program to a BA plus program. So if they go to a BA plus program, you have a couple of things at work. The master's programs in the School of Ed have become weakened over time because of kind of diffusion of responsibilities and a lot of competition from outside sources. So what we're envisioning is trying to reinforce content majors. People get BA plus, they get 15 to 18 credit hours after they get a BA, some before they get a BA as well, and then they enter the teaching force at teacher 3, because that's rather than as teacher 2. Then they also have the advantage of having already taken graduate courses at the University of Guam. So then that in turn feeds right into the master's programs at the University of Guam. So then you can continue to provide counselors, you can continue to provide research and meaningful research for educational practice, and you can provide administrators. And so that's the kind of the strategic view. Where the resources come in for that is that when we figure out how much money the School of Ed is going, when the budget is done, then we'll assign 1 FTE to each one of those specializations instead of trying to pool them. And it's kind of and having a bunch of people quote in a general categorical foundations, and then it's not real clear who's responsible. What happens is that the people who are majoring or specializing in these programs don't have a specific person to go to, then pretty soon things start kind of not, and that's basically what we're trying to do.
Well, I'm glad you explained education, because that was my concern, and I'm
My
glad to
concern
hear.
too.
Well, I was wondering whether maybe there's not a need anymore to produce more teachers, but I'm glad to hear that it's because of other
Actually,
universities who
we're
have
going
a
to get
presence.
better teachers.
Okay, and so, but have you eliminated any programs as a result of this matrix that you have, or ratings that you have?
Yeah. Well, what happens is they're going to get consolidated. Some programs, I would say, like a master's in fine arts, interdisciplinary, Japanese studies, some programs were eliminated.
So otherwise, if they're not eliminated, they'll be consolidated, incorporated into
The
other
others,
programs.
yeah. And then what happens, of course, is that we have on each one of these programs we have teach out provisions. No student is going to be, it's not an immediate end to the program. Whoever is a continuing major in there will be allowed to finish the program.
And what happens to the FTE then for those programs?
The
in
faculty?
Which, yes.
Well, they'll get reassigned. So in looking at it, like for example, Japanese studies, all right, so then you have 3 FTEs. The question is, are they going to be? Are there enough Japanese language courses to occupy them? And the answer is yes. So it's not a question that there's a distinction between, like, for example, people said, are you going to stop teaching philosophy at the University of Guam? The answer is no, but if philosophy doesn't start graduating 5 people a year within 3 years, the answer is there will be no philosophy major at the University of Guam.
Now, the university sends out, of course, a survey every year to get an idea of what the needs are of the community so the university can respond to it. And in this case with Japanese, and now there is this an influx of new tourists coming to Guam. Are there plans then to respond to that as well? To now add Russian and hopefully
Chinese.
further down the line
Chinese.
Chinese, right? But not wait until it actually happens, but in preparation for it. I know it's funny that we have to read this in the PDN, but there was an article about the engineering program that you're unable to do offer a 3 or 4 year program because without a building. So can you give us a status on that building and
Well,
the
that goes
program
back
itself?
to the
loan.
it's combined. The USDA loan is for the Student Services Center and the engineering building. And if the the engineering building will actually be built pretty quick in comparison to the Student Services Center. So, in reality, we will not get any kind of accreditation without a building and without at least 3 labs. And so that's really, and people are not, there are, engineering firms and there are private interests that are interested in donating to a lab, but unless they see an actual building, we're kind of waiting for each other.
So are you timing it where maybe at least the first year the students can start while the building is going on before
Well, we
they
have a
move on to-
pre-engineering program now. So our pre-engineering program is the most robust ever. I think we have pre-engineering. So these students go off island and can basically transfer to any engineering program. Our pre-engineering program is pretty solid. And then we have specific partnerships with some universities. We have a specific partnership with Mapua in the Philippines. And the reason for that is that Mapua is the only Abbott accredited, which is U.S. National Engineering Accreditation for schools of engineering. It's the only Abbott accreditation. It's the nearest one. I think there's another one that's in Asia, in India, I believe, that's Abbott accredited. But it's the one so what we're positing, Senator, is that once we get the building up, we'll go to a 3rd year. And that 3rd year will be done in collaboration with specific schools. And then once we get to the 3rd year, then we'll invite the Abbott accreditors in, and then they'll certify the 4th year, and then it'll be seamless. So that's generally the process. If you ask me for, an estimated time of that, I would estimate that at a minimum it'll be 2 years after the building is built.
Another question you also said, I'd like to know about your solar program, that there would be some savings, and where would the savings go to? Your solar program, you're going solar at the university, and there'll be some savings for that. Where would those savings go to?
Buy more solar, actually. And to some extent, we look at it as one integrated whole. So, we're not looking at it as, we just hope that our savings don't go to GovGuam general funds. That's the only
No,
thing.
that's why I'm asking. How to go right back into the university.
So, there's no incentive to save, So, a lot of it has to do with
Public good.
public good. Thank you. See, I'm going to have to eat some of my words here.
Yeah.
But, I think we have about $200,000 in savings. There's all kinds of possibilities that we're entertaining in the table, establishing a mini microgrid, trying to do different kinds of things that will establish that, because for us, that's not just, for the university, that's just not a cost savings. It's also modeling. It's also trying to do demonstration projects so that other people can see the value of it. And, as we prepare for a different just hope they stay at the university.
Well, and that's why I asked, because, we had legislation, of course, for the schools now, for all of our schools to consider with going with solar panels. And I structured the law to make sure that wherever the savings are, that it goes back to that particular school, so the schools then can use the money for, minor maintenance, repair, or supplies and materials. And by the same token, if that was the case as well for the university, that I would like for that, savings to stay at the university.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Now, you've also indicated that you have a .5 million each year from student loans that have been defaulted. Why are they defaulting? What are some of the reasons? And is there anything that we can do to help out? Or what are you doing to reduce that number?
Well, we're trying to educate students. For the past, I would have to say that for the past 10 years, there's been this kind of attitude to just keep borrowing money. And, there was almost an encouragement. Now we're trying to discourage that. The problem in the student loan is that the loan is arranged by the student. So it's the student who owes the money, but the university is held responsible if they default. We're looked upon as being irresponsible if the students default, but it's not really our default; it's the students' default. So it's part of the I've tried to explain this in the public. It's part of the college scorecard. If you Google college scorecard, which is the out of the White House, out of the U.S. Department of Education, you'll see that universities and colleges are going to be rated on their default rate and how much it costs to go to school there, what they call the net price and the tuition, and then people will make that comparison. You can go to the college scorecard now and Google and enter University of Guam, enter any university. You could enter Guam Community College, you can and see what kind of data exists there. It's not complete, but for us, I think it's going back to the student experience when they come in, and then when we give them the opportunity to go into developmental math and English, and we do a little counseling. We do that now through ID 180, but we're going to shift that to what we call learning communities, where students are kind of relating to each other as a cohort. And in those learning communities, they will be doing things other than just academic preparation, but also becoming smarter about loans and becoming smarter about financial aid. Because, the average student, the average debt is a little over $25,000 now. And, that's pretty tough. Pretty tough to enter the world of work with that kind of debt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. I also like to thank Senator Frank August for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Speaker Ben. Welcome, Tritons, to your legislature. Thank you for being here. President Underwood, first, thank you so much for welcoming us to your office. I think it was last week. I think during that time we were able to really discuss this. This was a lot of this was what we discussed, and so I appreciate. And as a follow-up to what Madam Speaker has raised, I would like to reiterate a couple of things. And one is, I do appreciate that through this process, we will be strengthening School of Education. I really think, as we look at our mission statement, all of that is about teacher preparation and ensuring that our growing students are prepared for life. And it is through our teachers that that's going to happen. And as I shared with you that day, I think what you're describing will work for our secondary programs. I think for math and science and social studies, our languages, I think for many years we've been wanting to do that model, where you go and you learn in those particular colleges, and then you come back to School of Ed and learn human development and methods and all that other stuff. But I still remain I remain in my belief that early childhood and elementary and special ed and English as a second language, it's going to be hard to do that in that model. So I do ask that those conversations continue. I do ask that we really think about early childhood standing on its own. That's a whole science on its own. And I think that representation wasn't really had because we don't have early childhood people on faculty. And they're hard to find. They're hard to find across the nation. And so that for me is a concern. And as we spoke that day, Mr. President, when we look around our island and we see what's going on, there's some good things going on. But there are also some pretty horrible things going on. Our crime rate's atrocious. Our welfare assistance is at levels that are just unforgivable. We have people who believe they're entitled to handouts. And we need to get back to the idea that people need to work, to feel good about themselves, to want to work, to be motivated to work, to belong, to be respected. All very critical aspects of life that come through good teaching. It comes through good family life, but the family life does come through good teaching. And so I'm simply putting that on the record because we have already spoken about that. As well, the whole notion of, I really appreciated the triangle, what we're really good at, the resources at the bottom, and then what we're passionate about. And we did talk about that day that Guam is very passionate about their families. And what is unique about us is really where we are and how we represent diversity. Only Guam has that base of diversity and being American. And only Guam has the capability of learning from all of that. And then the resources come with it. So the notion of a family center, I really hope that we do explore. And I know it will cost money. But I think from that, with the modeling, the data gathering, which we certainly lack, how do we go from birth through sunset? Right now we have so many challenges with our NOMCO, with our returning veterans, with everybody. Most of us are single parents these days. It's just a real challenge. And I look to the University of Guam as always a place, how do we do better? Where are we? How do we do better? Where do we need to get? And so your leadership will help us get there. I'm very glad that you're looking at 10-year performance. I was pleased to hear that there's something that's going to kick in to help us know that the accountability is in place. I just really think that's important. And then lastly, Mr. President, I want to thank you for your faculty and your people on staff. I've been talking about transit, and Mr. Okada said, I'd like to be at the table. And he's been a great help. I've been very concerned about rhino beetles and fire ants and all of that. And Dean Udine has Roland always at the table. And there's great examples of your leadership that have come into the community. And it wasn't like we had to call them and say, they just email and say, we're going to be there. So, and I do know that comes from leadership, that the doors are open and that you understand that it is a part of our responsibility to help. And so I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I could just respond briefly. Well, before I do that, I want to recognize Regents Gale and Herrero for also. There's my other bosses over there. I take your remarks very seriously about the School of Ed, as I do Speaker Wampan's. That was the most painful part of Good to Great for me because, that's what I am. I came from the College of Ed, and when you're in the teacher ed business in the academia, you're like Rodney Dangerfield. Hardly anyone gives you any respect. They don't think that you have a lot of academic muscle power. People just think you're just there, and it doesn't. They don't have that kind of strong relationship with practitioners that we should. So people are generally, it's the only profession where when you go out in the public, people will say, "Oh yeah, you don't really need teacher ed. Anybody can teach. Anybody can do this. Just give them a couple of courses. They'll be able to handle it." So you have all these fast track, all these kinds of programs that are done that way. Nobody ever says that about nursing or engineering or accounting. Hey, anybody can be a nurse. Just give them a hypodermic needle. They'll figure it out. And it's very dispiriting when you're in teacher ed to hear these kinds of remarks because it's widespread disrespect for the profession. But you did touch a very serious vein, and in terms of the Center for Family Studies, certainly is important enough. It's a big part of our mission. It's the resource part that we're trying to figure out. You know, the whole nature of how people deal with life. And one of the, a team of us went to an accreditation meeting in LA in April. One of the speakers pointed out something that just kind of boggles your mind when you think about it, is that, 1 out of every 3 people born today is going to live to the age of 100. And the person who's going to live to 150 has already been born. So the nature of life, the nature of family support, the nature of social networks, the nature of what are people going to do after they retire from Guam at the age of 55? All of these issues are kind of like rushing into, kind of extreme tension. How do we deal with that as a society, and what kind of data are we going to collect to make intelligent decisions, not impressionistic decisions? We don't have to, go out and start panicking because everyone's going to live to an age 100. But I mean, that means lots of things are going to happen, and the whole nature of what happens to families in that is very critical.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Abbott?
Well, I appreciate the budgetary presentation, but I just wanted to share a personal experience during University of Guam Charter Day. I came across 4 GW students. They were all seniors, and I asked them, just generally speaking, I said, okay, so what are all your plans right after graduation? In that small group, all 4 of them said that they were going to continue their education at University of Guam. Then I walked around a bit, and I came across a group of 5 students from Southern High School, and I asked the very same question. And 3 of them said they were going to UOG. 1 said they were going to GCC, and the other one said that they were going to seek employment. So I think that that really bodes very well for what the university community has done over the course of the past few years in terms of making the University of Guam, using your words, the natural choice, and then obviously GCC being a contributor in that aspect and encouraging our students to continue their training and their education. So I just wanted to share that personal experience because it really was the highlight of that charter day. In addition to all the vendors and being able to participate and celebrate the University of Guam, I think that was really one of the things that I walked away with, knowing that students are looking at continuing their education and their training beyond getting a high school diploma. So kudos to the university community and to the college.
Well, it's the entire university's effort, because the university charter day has become a major recruitment device, where it used to be just kind of an interesting field trip and a day where there were other activities going on that we're not too proud of, but now we've changed the whole trajectory. We've changed the trajectory of Charter Day, and you're absolutely correct, Senator. We try to tell people that people ought to come to university because they get a quality education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vice Speaker.
I just wanted to make one comment. It's not that I'm not interested in the budget. The president had to suffer me for about 2 hours last week when he invited me to the Good to Great discussion, and I got most of my answers there. So I want to thank him, like Senator Yamashita, for the invitation. And fortunately, I was the only one that was there, and so I was able to monopolize the conversation and ask all the questions that I needed answered. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And we discussed the problems that many of us had about what was happening to the School of Education and the needs. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that we've spent a considerable amount of time last week, and my questions were answered. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to wrap up this hearing at 11 o'clock, so I've got a few more minutes, and I'd like to ask a couple of questions, and then the speaker will. In your budget request, there are approximately 35 positions that are being funded, which are vacant positions. Total academic employee
those positions were budgeted. As you know, we've had problems with cash appropriations, which are now getting better. So part of our the way we have to run our business, and the president hinted at it, was that we very often during the year have to defer positions that fall open in order to balance our budgets. Our feeling is with this budget and with the authority that came out of this legislature in the PL 3268, I believe it was, that allowed for the university to not be subject to the holdback process. I think those two things together, the additional funding together with the better cash payments out of DOA, and together with our own improvements to improve our recruiting processes, which also need improvement, that those three things will be able to narrow that gap and put these, particularly the faculty and these highly needed academic support staff, into their positions. So it's been a combination of those three things that have caused us the delays.
So can you just give us a calendar or a schedule?
We can, yes.
When you would kind of,
Yes.
Target bringing on these positions?
Yeah, we're trying to move as quickly as possible. My guess is that we're best looking at the spring in terms of making a dent, and probably the fall after that.
If I could add to that, Senator, the exempting us from the holdbacks has been of great assistance to us in terms of allowing us to manage our resources. And the issue still, is that we're trying to get to a realistic basis so that people are not anticipating having positions that cannot be funded until 6 months or 7 months into the fiscal year. And by then, because of cash flow issues or because of some things that come up, and once we get to that point, and we believe that this budget will get us to that point, and this in combination with the exemption from the holdback that you gave us, will bring us to some reality.
Right. And and so we'll get that schedule, Dave, or?
Yes.
Okay, great. The legislature allocated $305,497 to pay for the increase of the Competitive Wage Act. Is this sufficient to cover the University of Guam for 2014?
Yes, it is. We actually did the reverse. We knew how much we had, and we managed our phased implementation of the GPP system into that. So we gave our first adjustments in February. I believe our next adjustments are scheduled for August, September period. And then, as the president said, the number's much higher for FY2015. Yes.
Okay. We also see that there's a request, as you mentioned, Mr. President, for a 2% increase for the unclassified employees. How did you determine this percentage?
Well, it's roughly equivalent to the increases that the classified employees receive. But basically, the administrators haven't had any adjustments since 2000. Well, I think they've had.
The administrators have had their scale frozen since 2003, so that's 11 years. The faculty last had their scale adjusted in 2010. So the faculty are beginning to fall behind the benchmarks we use for faculty compensation, and that's a problem for us, particularly in recruiting, as you might be aware. We're having a hard time attracting people into the administrative role because the administrative salaries are even so much more behind because they're benchmarked as well. And part of that is our own decision to put the increases associated with the faculty and staff above that of the administrators, but we can't hold that posture much longer.
There's also a budget request for $260,000 for the RCUOG. Is this being funded by local appropriations or internally generated revenues by the University of Guam? I thought that the presentation, when this concept was being discussed, was there was going to be a self-funding mechanism.
We hope to get there. The monies that we're requesting now are transition monies to get us going. What our hope is that RCUOG, and this was our hope as well as Vice Speaker's hope when we talked about it with him was is that our COG would be able, because of its flexibility, because of its scalable infrastructure, to better support and grow the amount of competitive grants we have. When we do that, the indirect costs should go up. So our intent is to get through a transition period, 1, 2 years type of a thing, and then to have them on a self-funding basis based on indirect and their own ability to attract grants and contracts. So it's a combination in this early day, Mr. Chairman.
Would there be any chance or intent to repay it once you start making money?
Go ahead. You know, that's a great idea. Talk to them.
Solar panels.
The executive budget requested appropriations or appropriates 1.5 or 1.1 million from the Territorial Educational Facilities Fund, which is the real estate taxes. Is the university expected to need this full amount? This is for the student services and the engineering annex. Remember that we had this discussion of, when's the loan going to come? When's the full debt service going to kick in? GCC had said, although they had received $500,000, they said we only need $100,000 for this fiscal year because we don't anticipate, closing the loan and building the building at this time. What is the university's position with regards to this 1.1?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will need it in FY14. We will not.
Oh.
We will need it in FY15 and for 40 years beyond that. As you know, the USDA financing, as the President indicated, is delayed, much to our chagrin, but nevertheless delayed. We anticipate breaking ground in 15, and we will need the money in FY15 and from then forward. FYI, we're also getting $1 million from TEF for general operations, which is subject to the same constraints that TEF is facing at this point. So we've already been notified that that's questionable whether or not we'll receive either of those two amounts, the $1 million for general ops and the 1.15 for the building. The 1.15 we can live without. The other 1 million tougher.
Did you receive the 250 from the highway fund?
Yes, according to Zenny, our controller, we did.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm going to recognize the speaker now who has some additional follow-up questions.
Thank you. In your budget request also, you've indicated that there's, a lot of competition, of course, for federal grants. And I know, and I'm not going to dig up a lot of stuff, but the publicity, of course, surrounding this recent DOI report that has questioned the funding that the university received. But I know that under your watch, there wasn't anything, of course, that you've done wrong. But I'd just like to know, how do you plan now to address this and ensure that that negative information, would not then taint any of the other departments and agencies who could, that your university is able to apply for some of these grants?
Well, we continue to receive DOI grants, so DOI itself is not, and in fact, DOI, the technical assistance people are planning a visit to the university in August to discuss more grants. So but the problem, of course, is the impression that's given. So once something's on the internet, it's there forever. And so, the impression is that there was something that was going on. Let me just state so that it's clear. The university was the administrative agent for that grant that actually was for the MCSF. MCSF is not a unit of the university. No university employee was benefited from any expenditure from that grant, and there was no money expended for any university activity. And so, we were trying to be responsible parties, and sometimes that doesn't work out. But we've moved on from that. I think that it's a minor thing. I don't know that there were no laws that were broken, no rules violated, and it said so interestingly within the report. So, I'm still trying to figure out why it was such a big deal, but
What was your
probably because of the people involved.
so what was your what do you charge as an indirect cost, a percentage
Well, yeah,
for handling grants?
It varies. We're
57.
we're at 59% if we get it on personnel.
59%.
On personnel
On personnel.
within the grant, right? We don't average that even close. So we average, much less than that. I don't know what the average is, but many grants have no indirect at all.
DOI has no indirect.
So if you get any DOI grants, you won't get any. Well, the reason I'm asking because we're looking at a grant coming to you and that I'm working on, so I wanted to know whether I need to factor in this 59%.
If it's DOI, probably not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it
But
is
that's our
DOI.
official rate that applies to all of our grants that pay indirect. Many of them don't. Some want to negotiate with you to pay less. It really depends on the agency, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so again, I know you had asked for startup costs for the research center, but how do you plan to expand the university's research capacity then? And are you applying for any kind of grants that would be related to assist in this?
Well, there's lots of grant possibilities, and the RCUOG is designed to give us the flexibility to hire people quickly and to procure materials quickly, and to have a structure that carries that out, so that we can scale up additional grants and contracts without having to expand the existing administrative and financial infrastructure. That's the base thinking of that. So, this has been done successfully with other universities. So, for example, we're still working on an EPSCoR grant, which has the potential of giving us, maybe $10 million over the course of the, next 4 to 5 years. We're still pursuing an additional cancer grant. But let's say we received a renewal of the cancer grant, and we wanted to add a grant for a center for families, or we wanted to add a large operation for diabetes. Under the previous system, we'd have to figure out what is the current administrative and financial infrastructure of the university's capacity to do that. And so under the RCUOG, what we're doing is basically being a clearinghouse and hiring people quickly, and then moving them on, doing the projects, and not being tied to the existing infrastructure. So it will also involve, and this is something that the university has to consider, it'll also involve taking those very indirect costs that we're talking about and sharing them differently, so that the individual PI, the principal investigator, will have access to more. We'll also have the RCUOG will be supported by that. RCUOG is meant to make money for itself. It's not meant to be part of the existing infrastructure of the university. Then over time, of course, then you have the possibility of doing, research partnerships with private companies, protecting intellectual property. The way that the 21st century campus is envisioned is, if you look at Dean Circle, most of those buildings will be knocked down, and there'll be a Triton Engagement Center building, which is the next building plan, and that building will house all of these kinds of external grants and contracts that the university has. That'll essentially be kind of like the basis for RCUOG's future work. Then we have anticipated along the fence line there a series of labs that that scientists could be involved in work with partnership with private companies. So those are the kind of thinking ahead a little bit on that issue. But RCUOG, we're hoping this $300,000 as seed money. We're not treating it as a loan, but basically a one-time venture, and then we'd be up pretty quick.
And my last question is that on your request also for a .5 million appropriation for Weary, and one year that sticks out to me is the Guam Hatchery, and I have to say that I have to thank Dr. Dean, rather, your dean, who provided a tour, and I was very impressed with the hatchery. But I'm wondering are you thinking now really to go beyond what it is that you're doing in terms of helping to sustain itself and not just do this for the sake of providing only the research, but eventually to be able then to, if this is given out, sold, just whatever it is at cost or shipping, that you'll be able to sustain that particular division or section or school.
I think we're hoping to make money.
But the question is is there anything basically that either through legislation or through just the university moving out, I mean, because you're a land grant, and could you then be able to do this without being restricted to the university being a land grant and just a research?
No, the impediments that we face in moving forward with any potential partnership on the hatchery have very little to do with the university structure, have more to do with access to the hatchery. So there's some property issues there that we have to take care of. So, we're working with land management to do some surveys, and then it's the access to the property. Because, the high point of the hatchery, or the strongest point for the hatchery, is that it's pathogen-free shrimp. So when you get your brood stock from that hatchery, your chances of generating, more shrimp is increased exponentially. So, I've had gone to China, I've had discussions with the Shanghai National Shanghai Ocean University about it, and I told them, I said, I'm eager to see the, great-great-grandchildren of these Guam shrimp be eaten over here in Shanghai. I want them to be eaten here, but first I got to get this partnership done, but I got to get that access issue, which is unfortunate, and we only discovered it in the past few months. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker, by way of clarification, Dr. Peterson asked me to let you know that DOI does allow an amount for administrative costs. So they don't allow the indirect, but they allow you to put in something for administration. And we can give you some more details afterwards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you very much.
Working with OEA, you need anything from them?
Just some adjustments. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and your staff and management this morning for your presence doon ko lang sa Dismasi. Esta taga pa ako para no dekasan tayo, estudiasan tayo in Clubri.
Taza te tenan fuera de tacat culés, ¿cuánto?
Pues